Work besties, we're gonna have a nice fun conversation today where I'm gonna share a lot of my tips and tricks for effectively working from home. It's been about 4 years now that I've worked remotely, and I've learned a few things along the way. So I'm gonna share a lot of the things I've learned along the way that have made quite an impactful difference in my work from home journey. Number one, and I honestly think this is the absolute most important, is you need to establish a routine day one. I think when we work remote, or when we don't work remotely, we're working in an office, it's really easy because that routine's kind of established for you because you have the commute, you have getting there, you have the commute home. When you work from home, it's home, work, all kind of in the same shared space. The lines between personal life and work life can get really, really gray. And so establishing a routine for yourself early is really, really important. And on that topic of routine, I think one of the most impactful things that I've introduced in my routine of my work from home days is to start my day doing something for myself. So this idea of work for yourself or on yourself before you start working for someone else. And this doesn't need to be, a couple hours dedicated to you. It could be make your favorite drink. It could be do a little skincare routine. Maybe you go get some movement in. Maybe you spend 15 minutes stretching. Maybe you spend an hour at the gym and get up early, but do something to start your day that is for you. I know it can be really tempting when you work from home to roll out of bed, get on your laptop, and start your day. So the first thing you're doing is work. It's important some days to recognize when doing something for you is sleeping in. It can also lose that sense of routine because it's just work. The moment you wake up, you haven't had time to do anything for yourself. I found it to be really impactful. So start your day doing something for yourself. If it's 5 minutes, great. If it's an hour, great. If it's a half an hour, great. Just find something that serves you in the mornings. Another really important one is designate a space in your home or your remote work setup that is just for work. At least when I started working from home, I was like, this is great. I can work from the kitchen table. I can work from the couch. I can work from bed. But then those lines between personal space and workspace got really, really gray. And so having a designated workspace that when you're in that space, it's work time. When you leave that space, it's home time has been really, really important. And also just a space that you can keep tidy, that you can keep organized, that you could have calls in, so you could potentially, close a door. Whatever the space looks like for you, it could literally be the corner of a table. It could be an entire home office if you have that, but just some sort of space that is dedicated to just work. Division of space, work life, and home life is extremely important. Another one is to understand if your company has a work from home budget. I know a lot of companies, especially during 2020 and 2021, 2022, had a budget available for their employees to purchase office supplies for their home. And if you do have a budget allocated, here are the top things that I would spend it on, that I have invested on. An ergonomic desk chair. Number one. I feel such a difference when I sit in like a kitchen table chair all day on a work day versus an ergonomic chair all work day. Night and day, I would say that is like number one. The other two that I really think are quite important are a wireless mouse and a wireless keyboard. And then the next, if you have budget available, if you have the funds available, an ergonomic sit-stand desk. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't stand at it a lot. It gives me the option to, but just being able to adjust the height of the desk so that you can kind of sit up with your posture, and depending how tall you are, you could cross your legs under the desk. You can adjust it to how it best fits your body ergonomically, which I really like about that. So those would be my top 4 things that I would spend money on if a budget is available to you. Also, a good pair of headphones, and they don't just need to be work specific, but if you can use your work budget for it, that's great. But a good pair of noise canceling headphones that you can also use for work calls is really important. I use them when I'm trying to do really deep focus work and I don't want any sounds around me distracting me. I also use them for work calls so that I can stay focused in a meeting. Take your break. It can be challenging when you're at home because you're like, well, I'm at home, so isn't that a break? Or, I just stepped away to make a coffee. Be intentional with your break times. Set them in your calendar if you need to. Block off a little, 15-minute time period. Go for a walk. Go outside. Go look at the sky. Go do something that is away from your desk. Avoid the temptation of, I'm just going to sit here for 10 minutes and scroll on my phone. I think it's very important to physically leave that space that you've defined as work and then mentally disconnect from that space as well and truly go do something, because that's really at the end of the day what a break needs to be. Eat lunch away from your desk whenever possible. This is something that I've introduced in the last 6 to 8 months, and it makes quite a difference for me to not see that email pop up on the screen as I'm eating lunch, for me to actually step away, make a good lunch for myself, sit down and eat it, and then return to work. Stick with your work hours as much as possible. So I know a huge thing about work from home and flexible work is the fact that you can kind of do your work as you please. What I find with this is if your rule or your general, what you do every single day is, oh, I'm going to wake up and do little emails, and then I'm going to run out, and then I'm going to come back, and I'm going to have some meetings, and then I'm going to run out, and then I'm going to come back, and I'm going to work through the evening. If that works for you, great, but it can be really challenging to get into that routine if every single day looks a little bit different. And then oftentimes when that is the schedule for the day, I end up actually working over how many hours I should be working a day because it's not super clear and divided. So whenever possible, yes, sometimes you have to run out for an appointment, whatever. Those are the exceptions to the rule. But I would say just try to stick to your work hours as much as possible. When 5 o'clock or whatever time you finish work, when that time hits, you close the laptop. It's not, oh, okay, well, let me just finish this. No, you close it, you go have your personal time, establish that routine pretty early. Time blocking. This is a really important one. So a few factors here. You need to understand you need to understand what parts of the day you are the most focused, the most energetic, the most communicative when you want to have meetings, and almost time block to your best ability for your days. For example, I actually like to set aside times during my day to check my emails and respond so that I don't feel the need to constantly monitor them. And if I'm focusing on something, I'm like, oh, email, okay, let me go back here. The task jumping for me doesn't make me as effective or productive. I actually block in my days, this time period here, this is when I'm working on this and only this. This is when I'm doing my more creative work because I know in the mornings I am more creative. The afternoons for me personally are when I like to do the more mundane, boring tasks because I start to fade a little bit. And so understanding how your work days, how you feel throughout them, and then time block accordingly. I also find this really helpful for meetings. So if I have say in when a meeting can be, there's certain times of the day where I prefer my meetings. I find them to be the most effective during that time. And of course, there's going to be meetings outside of this naturally. But when I do have say in it, I kind of like to have them in certain days or certain times of the day. But just starting to time block your calendar, time block your breakout, time block your lunch. Silence your notifications. I have been doing this a lot lately, whereas I don't need to hear when an email comes in right away. I don't need to hear a Teams message pop up. I don't need to hear things that make it feel as though everything is urgent all of the time. If I'm focused in on something and I start to hear notifications, it's going to take me out of what I'm doing, which doesn't really help anything. And at the end of the day, Conan wants to get involved in this too. There are very few occasions in a work setting I've found in my experience that are actually urgent and important and need to be addressed within the minute of receiving something. So just getting in this mindset of if everything is urgent, then nothing is urgent. Things can wait. You can get to things later, but silence those notifications as much as possible. It's very helpful. Okay, this is a personal one to me. I like to start every single day before I open my laptop and the emails start flowing in. I like to start every day by creating a list of all the things I know I need to accomplish that day, all of the deliverables I need to get done, any key emails I need to send, any key work I need to start really focusing in on. As I start my day, and I write all of these things out. And it gives me a really good kind of scope of what my day looks like. And it also allows me to sit with all the work that I need to establish and go, okay, am I able to reprioritize some of these things and push off tomorrow? Is this list manageable and I can do everything? Are there things that are more important than the others that really need to be established? Are there things I need to get done before lunchtime? So I have a really good idea of my day before the day even starts. And yes, things come up, absolutely. But what I've found through doing this is when things come up, I have a good idea of, okay, can I take care of those things right now, assuming they aren't urgent? Or do I need to prioritize them for the next day because I already know my scope of work today is pushing my capacity? So it gives myself a really good check-in. And then I find during those really, really busier times of year when I have so much on the go, sometimes I'll write my to-do list for the next day at the end of my workday so that it removes a lot of thinking in the morning before I get started. Instead, I just sit down, I review it, have a good idea of the scope of the work today, and then I jump in and open my laptop. So I found that really helpful. Honestly, pen and paper, to-do lists, I write little squares beside them so I can check them off as I go. very simple, but that's what I like to work with. Schedule and attend meetings when necessary. And I know it's not always within our power, but there are situations where a meeting makes so much more sense to just talk something out, brainstorm something out, and it can be really quick and really effective. And on the flip side, there's times where meetings are scheduled that really it's kind of a waste of everyone's time and probably not the most effective use of time for everyone on the call. And sometimes there's meetings that, sure, they're important, but your involvement in them isn't really important. So understanding when to schedule meetings, who to schedule them with, and when you can kind of take a step back and say, you know what, I'm not able to attend, but if there's meeting notes after, I'd love to be included in the follow-ups or action items or what have you. Understanding that you only have so many hours within a workday, if they're all packed with meetings, when are you getting the other work done? You know? So I would say meeting fatigue is a very real thing. You want to be mindful of how many hours a day you're sitting in meetings. And then you also want to be mindful of where and when a meeting is just a way better use of time to get something resolved or something discussed with your colleagues. Get everything in writing / put everything in writing. So even if you're like, yep, no, I'm going to remember that for sure, write it down. If you've had a meeting with someone and it's a great conversation, you have a lot of follow-up actions, write them down, send an email, keep everything documented, because I've found working from home, especially when you don't have a coworker next to you to be like, hey, do you remember what we discussed on that call? What was that action item? You've got to really sort of take account of all of the things that you discuss within a workday, all of the details that are going into a project plan, for example, that you need to work on. I would just say, when in doubt, write it out. Oh, that's cute. When in doubt, write it out. And then reverse too, if someone else had said something or you're looking for clarification, I prefer more so than a call to get it in writing so that I can refer back to it in the future. And you can have a good kind of transcript of things as they go, because sometimes you need to reference back of who said what and what details were necessary and whatnot. So when in doubt, just always get it in writing. When in doubt, write it out. I love that. I'm going to use that. All right, setting boundaries, which we all know is like one of my favorite things to discuss on here, but boundaries with coworkers and also boundaries with those who you share space with. Your home life, whether that is family members, dogs, partners, roommates, whatever the relationship is there has to be a set established boundaries of working. And that can look anything from, when the door is closed in this room, do not enter. I'm in a meeting. When my headphones are on, do not disturb. There's so many different ways, and it completely depends on your situation, but just kind of communicating and establishing those boundaries with the people that you lived with, and then coworkers as well. Like, not everyone needs your attention all of the time, and some people can wait. And I know that for someone like me, if I'm focused in on something, it's really discouraging when my focus is completely broken for something that is not urgent, because it takes me a long time to regain that focus. With your coworkers, it's important to kind of establish, if you need me, send me an email, send me a message. I'd prefer that over you calling and breaking my focus of something when I have no idea what you're calling about anyways, and it's probably not urgent. So coming up with a set of boundaries that help you work more effectively during the day, and then start to establish them through your behavior, through communication, because at the end of the day, that allows you to work more productively, and that allows your output to be better, and the company always wants the output to be better, right? So it's helpful for everyone at the end of the day. Set timers for focus work. So what I like to do, it kind of goes back to this time blocking. If I'm like, okay, I know I need to get this done by end of day, and I really need to focus in on it, I'm going to give myself 30 minutes to just work at it, and then I'm going to take a little bit of a mental break from it, refresh before I come back to it. Or if it's not even focus work, maybe it's okay, I'm going to do another hour of work and then I'm going to go take a break, set that timer. Because then sometimes if I get really focused into something, I won't even notice how much time has gone by, and then suddenly I'm like, oh my gosh, I am supposed to be in a meeting right now. Actually, that is another good time when a timer is good to use, is if you have an important meeting coming up, or any meeting, because people's time is important, set a timer for like 5 minutes before the meeting, especially if you're in really deep focus work, to make sure that you don't miss that meeting. Because I found when I was working in the office years ago, it was easy because I'd start to notice people get up from their desk and start walking to the conference room and be like, oh, Laura, you coming? And I never had to worry about it. Working from home, I'm like, there's no one that's going to be like, hey, where you at? Meeting. I mean, maybe they'll message you, but by then it's probably like too late and you're like holding up the meeting. So I find setting a timer to remind yourself that, hey, you got to be somewhere in like 5 minutes has been really helpful. Being intentional about communicating with your coworkers. We're no longer in this setting when working from home where you can just create casual conversation or water cooler talk or whatever you want to call it. It's important to keep relationships with your coworkers casually and also formally. And so what I found myself doing when I was sent to completely work from home is I would schedule brief kind of standing catch-up calls with those that I worked really closely with. And some weeks, things would come up and we'd have to cancel or reschedule. And some weeks it was just, a half an hour of time to talk about work stuff. You can, how's life going? What are you currently working on? Like, it's just it's a time for you to create that cohesiveness within a group. Especially those that you work closely with. It also gives you an opportunity to just ask questions. Like, I think when we're in the office, it's cool because you can overhear people talking about different projects. So you're a little bit in the loop just from what you overhear. Not as much when you're working from home. You can't eavesdrop as much as you used to. So what I find is really important of just having those casual catch-up calls. And then I also find them very helpful, especially if you lead a team, to have those calls in place so that if your team is like, oh, I really wanted to ask or talk about this or get some clarification, I know I have that meeting in the calendar for Friday. I'll save it for then, so it actually creates less interruptions throughout the week of touch points of like, oh, can I ask you this or this or this? It's like you save them all for the end of the week, and I found that to be quite impactful. So just having in your calendar with those on your team, those you work closely with, just a casual Friday catch-up. I like to do it on Friday afternoons, because I'm like, what else are we doing with our time? And it's a good way to end the week. Boosts morale, I like it. Once you've been working at home for a while, and maybe you don't relate to this, maybe you do, it's really easy, and it's nice because you can wear sweatpants every day and you can wear comfy clothes, throw your hair up in a bun. Like, you can change from your overnight pajamas to your daytime pajamas, and that's lovely and that's great, and it's fabulous, right? What I did find though is doing that every day actually made me not feel so great. Like, I felt just like a little slow, just like not so put together. It really dropped my mood quite a bit. I found that even once a week, getting ready, and I'm not talking like putting on a pantsuit and, sitting there all day with a buttoned up shirt, but getting ready with some intention behind it at least once a week, I have found has actually changed my moods throughout the week quite a bit, to just get ready, even if it's just once or twice a week. I don't know, maybe some people are watching this and they're like, oh no, I feel my best when I am just in my sweatpants every single day, and I love that for you. But I did notice over time it started to weigh on me a little bit, make my mood just like a little bit low, and when I would actually spend time in the morning getting a little bit more ready, I found my energy levels, my mood throughout the day was just a little bit higher, I don't know. And the last one I'm gonna leave you on is ask for support when you need it. We're no longer in the office, and it's not as easy of just, seeing your manager walking by and be like, oh yeah, I had a question. Can I get some assistance with this? Or pulling a teammate aside and being like, what are your thoughts? You have to be a little bit more intentional of asking for support. And sometimes you need clarity on things. And I think that when you don't have coworkers immediately around you to bounce ideas off of, sometimes you can feel really stuck. And I know sometimes I just stare at the screen and I'm like, I don't know where to go from here. But then I remind myself, I have a team. That is what the team is for. So being able to send a quick message or an email and asking for assistance, maybe you set up a quick little meeting to be like, hey, I have some questions to go over this. But never feel like you are a one-man show. You should never feel like that at work ever, because the reality is you're on a team you should be all having the same shared goal. And so lean on your coworkers just as you would in the office. Just now I feel like you have to be a little bit more intentional about it when you work from home. But know that people are there, and I feel like you almost need to communicate 10 times more when you work from home than when you would in an office. Don't be afraid to ask for support, to ask for help. You're not on your own. And I know when you're sitting alone in a room all day, it can feel like that, but you have a team at the end of the day, and they're there to support you. So do not hesitate to ask for help. It's going to benefit you and the rest of the team at the end of the day. As always, I appreciate you being here, work besties. Remember, even if you work from home, always take your PTO as well. And I'll talk to you soon, all right? Toodaloo. Woo!